could you tell us who you are?
Sure, yeah. So once again, my name is Norbert Kolos, and I'm the managing partner at 4CF, which is a strategic foresight consultancy based in Warsaw, Poland. I'm also the co-founder of the Polish Society for Future Studies, as well as the chair of the Polish Node of the Millennium Project.
So how long have you been involved with the 4CF?
Yes, I have founded the company with two colleagues something like 11 or 12 years ago. So the company is already established for over a decade, and that's more or less the time that for which I'm involved in future studies or professional foresight.
How long you been working with, or you've been included in the Millennium Project?
So actually I can't recall the exact year, but it must have been something like a few years after establishing the company. So maybe the Polish node of the Millennium Project exists for something like 8 years or so already, maybe 7, something like that. At the very beginning of the company, we were doing mostly quantitative analysis. So things like sales forecasts for big corporations, econometric modeling. But as our clients wanted to extend the time horizon of the analysis, we moved more towards the qualitative side. So nowadays we are joining those two. So after a few years of running the company, we learned about the Millennium Project, and we basically wanted to get in touch, and then we wanted to find out whether there is a Polish node established already. And we found out from Jerry that there is no Polish node that we could just join. So we ended up establishing a Polish node. So we are very happy for the opportunity to cooperate and network with many foresight professionals around the world, and then cooperate in projects together.
How many people are in the Polish node at the moment? Roughly?
Roughly, well, I would say 9 people, but it would depend how you count, because something like 6 years ago, we have co-established actually the Polish Society for Future Studies. So the Polish Society for Future Studies cooperates very, very closely with both 4CF and the Polish node of the Millennium Project. So if we count in all the people with whom we collaborate, either as the Polish Society for Future Studies or as the Polish node of the Millennium Project, I would have to say it's like 30 or 40 people maybe.
Okay, 30 or 40 people. We, like Korean node, is about 16-year-old node with about 20,000 people, not actively participating, but they are related. Whenever Jerry comes twice or 3 times a year. We invite him over for a speeches, mainly keynote speeches.
Sure.
So we have quite a lot of people who are sort of familiar with the Jerry Glenn, and also.
Jerry has been visiting us in Poland as well, of course, not that often as he visits you. We must work on that, as well as we must, work on our headcount. So we are more comparable, and then would be able to add a few zeros to the number of people.
How many population you have?
You mean
Poland.
in Poland? Something like 40 million people.
40 million?
Yes.
We are 50 million, so it's almost...
Yeah, it's comparable.
It's comparable. Okay, so you've been doing quite a lot of future studies work.
Yeah, sure.
Could you tell us about what you've been up to sales forecast.
Yeah. Okay.
And,
Sure. So yeah, sales forecasts were the very beginning, and as we all know, sales forecasts are not really foresight or future studies. It's just like prediction, and then if it is going to precise, it has to have a very short term if it's a sales forecast for some production company. But when it comes to foresight or future studies, we've been trying all sorts of various approaches, and from the very beginning we've been very methodology oriented. So once we learned about all sorts of various approaches and methods that are being used all around the world, the cutting edge methods in foresight nowadays, we started right away with making some adjustments and making our own versions of some of the methods, making our improvements. Some of the methods we use we have developed from scratch. They're purely developed by 4CF. Other methods we have just adjusted some things and made some changes. For example, we have our own Delphi platform. It's a real-time Delphi, which we call a smart Delphi approach actually, and it has a few changes compared to the usual approach, which we feel makes the whole process more intuitive, and it drives the discussion and makes some things clearer and well structured. So we feel it really works quite well, but it can also be other types of approaches. For example, there is a very simple tool which we call 4CF matrix, which has been developed to easily and quickly compare various alternative solutions. These can be, usually they are technological innovations or solutions for various problems. This has been applied in various applications and for various topics, like the future of cybersecurity, or the future of payments, or the future of retail, for example. And in this matrix we compare various potential solutions that could be used in a specific industry or area in terms of the average relative advantage of a given solution. And when I say average, it means the average in a variety of scenarios. So we analyze how well certain solutions work under various circumstances, in various imaginary futures, or in various scenarios, basically. And on the other axis of 4CF matrix, we have the earliest time to mainstream. So the earliest time at which potentially a given solution could be brought to market, for example, or just introduced to the public. And by comparing these solutions in such a way, we are able to see which ones are for example, pretty close to us, but may have a relatively low relative advantage, as opposed to the ones that are, for example, both close and with a very high relative advantage. These are the most interesting ones. So we are looking for those, because it's of course obvious that as time passes, the technology gets more advanced and so on. So we expect normally then there will be some progress. But what we're looking for is those serious disruptions, and we understand those as new solutions or technologies that could be introduced surprisingly quickly with a huge relative advantage compared to anything else that we currently have. So these are the ones that could disrupt how the world works or how an industry works at any given moment.
Yeah, earliest time of mainstream of a certain technology that you're talking about. Mm-hmm. Wow, it's interesting. If think about, have you done anything about 5G? 5G mainstreaming, which year? This year, next year?
Yeah. It's different. It's different compared to the usual approach of just trying to assess the probable time at which a given solution might become mainstream. So by assessing the earliest possible time, we are trying to basically provide an early warning, so that we are prepared that something may be introduced as soon as. Whereas when you just assess the probable time of introduction, you can feel safe. Okay, so you just say that it won't happen for the next 15 or 20 years. But that doesn't necessarily have to be the case, of course. We're interested in this extreme situation, the earliest possible time. So that has helped a lot, and actually it has been used in many different applications, both public and corporate, for the sake of analyzing, for example, where in which innovations to invest. So trying to assess what's more worth investing in. But of course, the 4CF matrix is just another one of the examples of the methods which we use. There is a big spectrum from the very analytic ones to the much lighter ones. In fact, like actually the board game which we have recently developed. It's a serious foresight game, which even though it's a game, we shouldn't be fooled by this mere fact, because it's used for serious applications as well. It's a game called Stranger Futures, in which you are trying to find the ways in which certain assumptions could be disrupted. And by disrupting assumptions here, we mean both the most natural way of disrupting an assumption, which is to trying to negate it, or to disruptively weaken an assumption. And on the other hand, trying to disruptively strengthen an assumption, because that's a disruption as well. Maybe we are, maybe the assumption is not strong enough, and then something should be taken into account in a much bigger extent than we expect, not negated.
So what are the examples? What are the things that you could tell us easier way to show us the stranger futures?
Okay, so in the most easiest terms, it's a game at the beginning of which you are supposed to identify a few assumptions which you might have, or which the participants of the who will play the game have. So this can be a result of an earlier process, for example. So any assumption or any trend which you would like to discuss. And then the players take turns playing 3 roles. So the first role, which we call the precog, is the one who will be trying to come up with an idea that could disrupt a certain assumption. So either strengthen it or make it disruptively weakened, okay? And the other 2 roles are not for discussing the assumption, but rather the idea of the precog. So we are trying to assess how valid a certain disruption is. We are not only providing ideas in this game, so it's not like simple brainstorming, it's more. It's both providing ideas and trying to assess them or analyze how valid they are. So for example, looking for early warning signals. So these 2 other roles than the precog are the upgrader and the challenger. And the upgrader tries to make the disruption of an assumption more valid. So when someone plays the roles of an upgrader, he tries to provide a statement that would validate the disruption. On the other hand, there is the challenger who does the opposite. He tries to make the idea for a disruption less valid. And then we analyze how many of these successful upgrades and disruptions a certain disruption had. And by that, we're able to see whether, in fact, by the end of the game, basically, we're able to assess which of the assumptions we had in the beginning are more vulnerable than others. because we just start with very strong assumptions of our group of players. But if we see that many of them have been successfully disrupted during the course of the game, then the conclusion could be that perhaps we shouldn't be so sure about some of the things which we have discussed. So the game serves a very important purpose, actually, because normally when people, and it can be people from some public institutions, or it can be the C-level executives of a certain corporation, are usually very defensive about the most crucial assumptions about the future which they have. So during the course of the game, in this very light setting, very playful setting, we are able to let them see that some of their assumptions are in fact quite vulnerable, and they shouldn't be so sure about the future. So they should be more on the lookout for alternative futures, especially regarding those crucial assumptions. So it's a very useful process in terms of persuading the decision makers that they should consider alternative scenarios, and by that they are able to enhance their foresight capabilities or strategic planning capabilities, and de-bias their thinking.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
very
I'll make
interesting.
sure
So-
to give you a copy of the game, actually, if you like it.
Yeah, also the earliest time of mainstream, like if you have an example of a certain technology, or what have you done for earliest time of mainstream projects?
Let me think. Well, maybe the easiest example could be from the retail sector, or the retail sector. I think could give us a good example. You might have heard about these Amazon Go stores. The ones in which you do not have any lines and so on. You just walk in, and the cameras all over the place can see what you're picking up from the shelves and so on. So when we were analyzing the future of retail, as well as the future of the payments industry, because that relates to payments in a strong way, this was something like half a year before Amazon announced Amazon Go stores. So only the people inside the corporations knew about it. And we're analyzing how the future of retail could work, and how the future of payment in retail stores could work. And we came up with an idea very similar to what Amazon introduced later on. And we assessed that this is one of those extremely interesting ideas. So the ones that are both very near in terms of the earliest time to mainstream. So we thought that if one of the huge companies with access to large amounts of capital invested in such a solution, then such a solution could actually be brought to market in less than a year or so. And at the same time, this could be a solution that would really strongly disrupt the market, because it's an advantage on so many levels. Basically, it's cost effective and convenient for clients. There's all sorts of various benefits. So these are the types of innovations that we are looking for, and the ones that once you put them on this matrix, you're able to realize really how they compare to others, and you're able to see the real advantage because of this combination of how close a certain things potentially can be, and as well how advantageous. So what will be the real difference between you and your competitors, or if we're talking about the corporate environment, when you're able to successfully introduce this technology to the market.